Welcome to the Community Voice series by the Chartered Institute of Credit Management.
Can you tell me a bit about who you are?
Well, my name is Glenn Bullivant. I won't tell you how old I am. Suffice to say, I do go back to the time of the beginning of running water and electricity, but there you are. I'm a widower. Have a grown-up daughter who is a great source of tickets for Wimbledon. I live in Skipton in an apartment in a converted mill. I'm now retired from active employment, but I'm still heavily involved in the credit management profession. I've been in it virtually all my working life.
Yeah. Oh, that's how I want to be as well. With my career, I want to be that passionate about what I do, and I am. But I really like that is that you're like still in it. You know what I mean? That's what I love.
Well, I think one of the things that I may be talking about things that you're going to want to ask me about later on, but I've always been, when I got hooked on the credit profession,
Yeah.
I became passionate about it, and I've always been passionate about it, and remain so, and always felt that I'd gained so much from it that the last sort of 20 years of my career was putting things back into it, and helping others and being around. I think it's a vitally important thing. I was told many years ago, if you lie in bed on Sunday night worrying about Monday morning, you're in the wrong job.
Yeah.
I never ever did that. I always wanted to be back at work. That sounds awful. I love leisure time, can't wait for my holidays and all the rest of it. But for me, the work-life balance is work is part of life is part of work.
Yeah.
Enjoy both.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't want the Sunday scaries. You do not want them. Yeah, no, what a great answer. So obviously, speaking about that career, can you give me a little bit of insight of what that journey was? Where did you start? What was your first sort of?
Well, I never really knew what I wanted to do. Like everybody else, when they're 15, 16, 17, 18, and you come towards the end of one tranche of the education process and you go into the next, your teachers, lecturers are starting to ask you, what do you want to do? I had never any idea. As we say in Yorkshire, out really, if it can earn a few quid. But I did get a job when I was still at school in the sixth form as a Saturday lad at Woolworths. Some people will remember
Yeah.
Woolworths, which I thoroughly enjoyed. For a £1, 1 shilling, the wage was for the Saturday, less 4 old pennies for the stamp. But whilst I was doing that, a similar job came up at an organisation called West Riding Trade Protection Association, which was a mutual association serving its members, doing credit reports and collecting debts. And they were looking for extra help in keeping the records up to date. And bear in mind, I'm going back to the time before full computerisation, and the pay was more than £1, 1 shilling for a Saturday. So I took it.
Yeah.
And I can't even now remember how much it was, but it was considerably more. And it was in itself a boring job, writing out records, big ledgers and so on. But the content of the ledgers, what I was doing, fascinated me. I'd never knew that things were recorded. Black things and white things were recorded. And I just got hooked.
Yeah.
And when the education process had finished and I got the opportunity, I went back to the West Riding Trade Protection Association to work there full time. And that's when I started riding around the city of Leeds on a red Vespa scooter, knocking on doors, collecting debts. We used to do credit inquiries. We used to do debt collection. We used to do, advice sessions. And I learned a lot working there. The office was like an old-fashioned bank with a counter. Public came in. And I can remember one occasion when somebody came in, they'd received a reminder letter or a debt collection letter, and they were furious and they were banging on the counter. I know my, blah, blah, I've never this and never that. And the manager at the time had written something down on a piece of paper and handed it to me discreetly, just said, look that up. And I went and looked it up. And of course, this person had more county court judgments than you've had hot dinners. And I just made a note of those and gave them back to the manager. And he said, that's it. And he just calmed the guy down by saying, I know a lot more about you than you think I do. And that taught me a huge lesson. And that lesson was basically not everything is what it appears to be. There's always a backstory. And going around the city, when I was doing credit inquiries, not just knocking on doors collecting debts, I learned very quickly that there was a lot to be gained from seeing the premises, seeing what state of the building was like, seeing what the garden was like if it was a house. Little clues that you picked up all the time. It's a nice day, there's washing on the line, there's some kiddies stuff on there, this is a family. These sound silly these days, Tom, but all those things were all part of building pictures. And I've always known that if you read something, you form your own picture. If you see it, the picture's provided. Yeah?
Yeah, true.
So that's how I started. And after a few years of that, I moved across the fence, as it were, into commercial credit management. And I've many a tale that I could tell you about commercial credit management. My first job was with a company that made mining machinery. So the biggest customer obviously was the coal industry, but they also made car crushing machinery. And so the customers on that side of the business were scrap merchants. And I don't know how scrap merchants handle the life in 2024, but believe you me, years ago, cash was king. The more cash there was and the less paperwork there was, the less the government knew about tax and the more anyway, that's another. I worked for a company that made gearboxes, commercial gearboxes for lorries, cars, battle tanks, aircraft carriers. So there were little electric motor gearboxes to things that went out on 55-ton low loaders to shipyards and so on. I worked for a company that made printing plates, aluminium printing plates. We invented the first printing plate that could be developed by water, no chemicals. In the same group were people like Rolls-Royce cars, battle tanks, defense, medical incubators. So it was a huge range. And so although I didn't have a great deal of exposure in my career to consumer credit, my last company was one that exported 75% of what it produced. So I had a massive exposure in B2B, domestic and export, all of which made me the silly old fool I am now, basically.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I was going to say, actually, so getting that first job, I'm sorry, I know I'm going off of script a little bit, but that first job then, sort of low entry requirement, and it was all from experience.
Yeah.
See, what you don't see a lot of these days is that anymore, which is unfortunate. You get a lot of people that go to uni and then they get stuck in like a...
Well, I think one of the problems is if you I do believe to a certain extent we've been misled. It's interesting that Sir Keir Starmer said only the other day he was launching this thing called Skills England to get more apprenticeships and training and so on and so forth. One of his illustrious predecessors, Tony Blair, was somebody who his mantra was education, education, education. And he wanted at least half the school leavers to go to university. And that's fine. I'm not knocking that, except when they come out of university with your first in whatever classical studies or something, whatever it may be, what are you going to do? And it's only on, Boxing Day when the pipe bursts that you realize how important it is to be a plumber.
Yeah.
Have you tried to get a plumber on Christmas Day, when the house is flooding? Call out fee of, I don't care what it is, I'll pay it, I'm being facetious, but I think what I'm trying to say is that there is a level of expectation put into people's minds that cannot be fulfilled, which is why, you will get graduates serving fries at McDonald's, which is, and I don't mean filling in between semesters, I mean literally working. And so, yes, a low level entry can sometimes be a very good way of getting into something if you are willing to learn as you go along. Some jobs, obviously, you need to be trained for, a HGV driver or a train driver or an airline pilot or whatever. Yes, but there are other jobs where if you have the I don't know what it is, the not motivation, wrong word. Yeah, maybe ambition, but if you have the capacity to absorb from other people, you can go a long way where you never thought you would at all. So yeah, that's degrees for me was a waste. I didn't go anywhere down. If I was to say hand on heart, what would I really have liked to have done when I was 18 years old? It would have been something like join the Navy. And I did actually go some way, but I failed the medical. I think it was something, not anything serious. It was just something like flat feet or some such, but I didn't see that as a slap in the face. I thought, well, that's no good. I've tried something else.
Yeah. And it's that ability also to bounce back that you need in order to actually be able to achieve what you want to achieve as well, is to be able to get knocked down.
You see, in credit, you're not going to be right all the time. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to let some credit out to a company and they're going to let you down. Don't throw yourself off the ramparts. I made a mistake. I'll learn from that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the main thing, isn't it? I mean, to mirror exactly what you basically just said about the capacity to learn and wanting to learn is why I will live and die by apprenticeships. There's no way I would ever recommend anyone go to uni unless you want to be a doctor or you want to be one of those, then please do, because there's no way I'm going to get a doctor that doesn't have a PhD to help me out. No, I'll live and die by apprenticeships. Take it all in, learn from the people around you. It's the only way to learn, in my opinion.
And companies are very, very, very short-sighted if they are not prepared to fund education and training. And that's a passion of mine. I hear it a lot, especially in a county like Yorkshire, where we're all keep our money very close to us, We've got very long, deep pockets and very short arms. But I hear so many employers saying, I don't want to do that because if she or he gets that qualification, they're going to go. So somebody else benefits. No, you're benefiting from them, and then it's a very narrow-minded view. So
I think that's a really good point to make, actually, in terms of, like, I've been lucky enough to be here and sort of prove myself by doing the apprenticeship and doing quite well, and they've put me through on the level 4 as well. But if a company's willing to invest in you, they're willing to invest back
exactly
in that company with that knowledge and stuff like that. So I guess you kind of put out a self-fulfilling prophecy if you can be like, oh well, they're going to leave, and
exactly,
right? So.
And you can always tell in a company where the attitude is right, where every company is going to have its proportion of clock watchers. It's going to have its proportion of try not to be anywhere in the corridor at 5 o'clock because you get killed in the rush as they all leave. But it's also going to have, I'm not going to leave here till I get this solved. It's a bit like the old-fashioned bank manager locking the doors. Nobody leaves until today's books balance. And that's giving, I find job satisfaction in, I've done it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you as my boss might tomorrow say, it's wrong, is this? Okay, I'm sorry. I did my best. I'll try again.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And it's also to have a boss that's willing to let you try again
Yeah,
as well,
yeah,
not to
yeah.
like, that's it, you've mucked it up. That's it, better luck next time. No, but that's when we made the new website. That was my big look back, and very satisfied with that myself. But yeah, so I completely agree with that whole satisfaction thing.
Yeah.
Once it's done and you can look back and see what you've
Yeah.
done, it's that. But you chase that feeling as well. Then.
Yeah. Yeah.
So no, I absolutely.
And the other thing about education, Tom, and this has happened to me. I used to do it. I don't do it now, but I mean, I used to do the tutoring for CICM, including some in-house company courses. And I did one a good few years ago now for a company in Leeds, a big brewery. And about 3 weeks into the course, the people came to that evening and said, we've got some bad news. I said, what's that? I said, this place is closing. We're all going to be made redundant. And I said, that's a great shame. What do you want to do? Well, what do you think we should do? I said, well, the course is paid for. The redundancy is in 6 months' time, or whatever it was. I can't remember the name now. You're doing this for you. You're not doing it for the company. This is going on your CV.
Yeah.
And they all stayed.
Yeah.
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 And actually, all of them got jobs.
As you should, if you get a
Yeah,
qualification and
exactly,
whatnot, absolutely. Yeah. Or I guess more recent, I guess. I say that, and the 40th anniversary of it is coming up. Is FECMA? Can you tell me a little bit more about what FECMA is?
The Federation of European Credit Management Associations was founded in 1986 by Sir Roger Cork, who was president of what was then the Institute of Credit Management. And he'd been, he was an insolvency practitioner, he'd an accountant, and he'd been involved in a number of European things in his career. And he'd got to know that there were various organizations in different countries, and thought it would be a good idea if we all got together at some stage. And that's how it started. And the interesting thing about FECMA for me is, and I learned very quickly, is that it might be Poland or Sweden or France or Spain or Germany or Italy, but we're all in the same business, and we all do the same thing, and we all have the same problems, and we all look for a way to get round, over, through, whatever it may be. Yes, the laws are different, the courts are different, etc., but the principle of credit risk, risk management, collection, communication, negotiation, all those things are exactly the same, whether you're in, as I say, France or Malta. And it's odd that some of the associations, I mean, ICM was founded in 1939. Most of the European associations are much, much, much younger, and some of them are very small in comparison, but very active in the same way that CICM is active. And we get together physically, face-to-face, twice a year for council meetings. We have meetings online as well. I've got one in September. The next council meeting, full council meeting, is in October in Dortmund, which football supporters will remember from the week or so ago. But we've got a council meeting online in September. And in 2026, we are looking to hold, we hold them every 3 or 4 years, what we call a Pan-European Credit Congress. We've had some very, very successful ones over the years: Budapest, Brussels, Malta, and I'm going to be shouted at for forgetting which from. Poland, yes, Krakow. But because it's the 40th birthday we really want 2026 to be hosted by CICM in the UK. So that's what we're planning to do.
Nice.
And really, if you are a member of the Chartered Institute of Credit Management, you have access to a whole resource of knowledge, experience, and so on. Because the Chartered Institute of Credit Management is a member of FECMA, by default, you have access to a Europe-wide knowledge and experience. And during the pandemic, for example, we got phone calls, because different countries had different methods of supporting, the furlough schemes and the bounce backs and all that sort of stuff. We were talking to each other saying, what are you doing in France? What are you doing in Germany? This is what we're doing. I had one call from somebody in France saying, this company's late filing its accounts. And I said, no, it isn't. It's been given 6 months grace because of the pandemic. Ah, right, okay. I've got problems collecting debts in Italy. Can you help? I'll put you in touch with somebody. Yeah.
It's really interesting what you brought up just like 5 minutes ago, where you were saying, even though they're all, they're international, they do have different laws and stuff, but that's what helps, right? Is that because it's a big network, essentially, is that sharing of knowledge becomes so much easier.
Yeah.
Really like that. So the future of FECMA and CICM and working together, how does that look?
Well, I think it looks rosy, quite frankly. I think we grow together. The UK leaving the European Union has made no difference to the UK's CICM involvement in FECMA itself. And in fact, it strengthens the link, because now that Europe is separate, our colleagues in Europe are more interested and need more information about how things, because, don't forget, Europe has always been a big market for the UK, but the UK is a big market for Europe. So trade goes both ways. I think the only thing that has kind of put a question mark over the relationship in recent years has been this big campaign for independence in Scotland, for example. But of course, again from our friends in Europe, they've known for a long time that the law is different in Scotland and in Northern Ireland to England and Wales. They now understand much more clearly the concept of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland being 4 nations. And we understand that, where we might have a company's house in Cardiff for England and Wales, in Germany they are federal states, and there's different rules and in different, bit like the United States, that's true in Arizona but not true in Arkansas. Well, Germany's a bit like that. So I think the need for each other will just continue to grow. And it's not a need, and need's the wrong word. The benefit of a relationship will continue to grow.
Absolutely, I think that's a really good answer. So sort of bring that back now to looking back on the entire career as a whole. Is there a big or pivotal moment that you look back on that sticks out to you?
Well, I guess in terms of national and international, we would say things like the pandemic. We would say recently this terrible IT outage. And I'm old enough to remember what we had as a 3-day week. Excuse me, a 3-day week during miners' strikes and things. And then other things like 9/11, when, at one time getting on a plane was not much more difficult than getting on a bus. All of these various things moved us towards more things being done online, more video conferencing, and so on and so forth. So I guess all those were all pivotal moments, but the ability of the credit profession to adapt, and the credit managers within that profession to lead that process, marks the profession out as unique, in my view. The world has gone to hell in a handcart. Put that to one side. We've got this to do. That's got to be our attitude all the time. My only concern, and I'll be perfectly frank, the fallout from the pandemic we are still living with. And it's this work-life balance, and it's the, should we be working in the office? Should we be working from home? It's not for me to make a moral judgment, and I wouldn't, but I learned a lot from people who sat next to me. I learned a lot from conversations at the coffee machine. I learned a lot from overhearing other people's approach on the telephone. Credit professionals need to be aware of their surroundings all the time. Don't look through binoculars. Have both ears, both eyes open. And I just think that this, I won't say it's a fad. I just think this process of working from home has got a downside that hasn't necessarily yet been fully appreciated. So I think we've got two things to learn from recent events. Communication between human beings and reliance upon computers. So let's get back to talking to each other face to face, and let's find ways of making sure we've got backup processes in place.
Yeah, massively important is that backup, especially after the recent like,
excuse me.
So no, I completely agree with that. And the whole thing about overhearing conversations, there's been so many situations where someone's talking to a client, and because you overhear that in an office, oh yeah, well I've dealt with that person, and this is the best way to reach them. If you're not in an environment where you can learn that, or know that, or share that information, it puts things on hold, and it makes things much more difficult in order to move forward.
And it's also much more difficult, the written word, than the spoken word. So you have to be very careful when you're sending emails or text messages or whatever. And let me give you an example of how the world does it wrong. If you see a written sentence and you read that, you put your own interpretation on that sentence. If somebody reads that to you, they're putting their interpretation on that. So BBC News, you might say, I don't know, bless his cotton socks, Clive Myrie, he's got a sentence in front of him which says, going back to the pandemic, PPE has finally been delivered to St James's Hospital, Leeds. Okay, you can read that. I guarantee he will read it as PPE has finally been delivered. Yeah? Now, that's the danger between a face-to-face conversation, or indeed a conversation on the telephone or whatever, and a written thing in the email. Somebody is going to put their own interpretation on the email, which may not be what the sender actually meant. The words are exactly the same, but they've been emphasized in a different way in the reader's mind. It's old-fashioned stuff, and I make no apology for it. Everybody in this institute knows that I'm a dinosaur. I didn't go down with the Titanic. I'm still here. But I just think this is a people profession, and we must never lose sight of the fact that credit management is dependent upon people. The systems are there to support us. We are not there to support the systems. Yeah.
That's true. And I think you're right. It does come down to that people profession, and it actually leads us really nicely on to one of our next questions, which is, beyond technical skills, what other skills do you think are most important for success in credit management? And it is that people part, right?
It's the ability to communicate, the ability to be an all-round human being, the ability to look at somebody and talk to them, to listen to them, not to interrupt them. Listen, ask them a question, they answer. Ask them another question, they answer again. They ask you a question, you answer. You communicate two-way. Communication skills, and also one of the things in all the years I've been in credit management, and this is where it's changed, the big change in credit management in the last half century is it's moved from a back office operation where nobody in the company knows what you do. All they know is that they don't want to do it, to something which is at the heart of the business operation. And it means that you can't be an introvert as a credit professional. You have to be, I don't mean a flamboyant extrovert. You don't have to wear silly ties like me. But you have to be prepared to put your head above the parapet. And actually, you know, we are the world's best at doing ourselves down, where in actual fact, in the credit profession, we are the world's best. We're better than the Americans who invented credit, as they like to say. We are the best. Come on, let's shout about it.
Yeah.
You are I say this to all the people I've taught over the years, you are the most important people in your company. Cash flow through your company is blood through the body. The credit management function is the heart. If that goes wrong and the blood stops flowing, the whole thing dies. Never forget that. So, people communicate and enjoy.
That's it. Yeah, you need to find something that you like, and well, like you were saying, blood flow through blood flow through the body. What a brilliant analogy that is. I remember, I think it was you that I spoke to, whenever it was, months and months ago, where you were like, to be a credit manager, you have to be a detective, you have to be a lawyer, you have to be a
well, the thing is,
sort of like a bunch of things that
yeah,
you have to be able to do.
You've put it quite well. I think I probably said you have to be a jack of all trades and try to be a master of them as well. But we know we can't be. But the real value of a professional institute like the Chartered Institute of Credit Management is I have to be a jack of all trades, and theoretically I have to be a master of all trades, which I can't be, but I've got lots of masters dotted about the institute who can support me. And that makes me, look, when I first started in this business, I didn't know a thing about insolvency. And I was invited to go to, and I don't know how it came about, but I was still at the Old West Riding. There was a meeting taking place at the Griffin Hotel, Boar Lane in Leeds, in the evening, a presentation by an insolvency practitioner. And I went along, and it was quite interesting. You know, I thought it was going to be like watching paint dry, but it was quite interesting. And afterwards, we had a drink at the bar. About 3 weeks or 4 weeks after that, Tom, in the company I was working with, I got a I forgot what the section 293, I think it was. I got a notice of meeting of creditors, and it was brought into my office and put on my desk by the finance director, who said, "You'll know what to do, Glenn." And I looked at them, yeah, okay. And a blatant clue, hadn't a clue, but I knew somebody. And I phoned this guy, and he's still a member here, Tony Armitage, insolvency practitioner. He's an old dinosaur like me. I said, "You won't remember me, Tony, but we met at yeah. Well, I've got this. Oh, send it along. Put me as your proxy, and we'll sort it all out." And I thought, why am I a member of the Institute of Credit Management? That's why.
Yeah, that is probably the best story that I've ever heard in action of why being in a network is so important. If you are ever to tell anyone why networking is important, it's for that.
Yeah.
For that reason.
Okay, there's a commercial advantage to Tony Armitage in it. I'm not hiding behind that, and he's not hiding behind that. But it's part of the network. So, you know, I say all along, my mantra, if I don't know, I know somebody who does.
That's it. Yeah, and that's a really brilliant example of that. It's obviously sort of talking less about skills, I guess, and more about credit management as a whole. How has credit changed over time? What has come, gone, and stayed the same? And I guess we've sort of spoken about how that people bit is really essential. That stayed the same. Do people still go out and physically look for those signs that you were talking about earlier?
Hey, I'm finding that difficult to answer because my immediate reaction to that would be no. They don't. Although some may say they do, but I doubt that they do. But there may be an answer to that in the sense that there is a lot of basic knowledge that says I don't need to go there to know that it's an office on a trading estate or whatever. What's changed is automation. It's as simple as that. I mean, there are things that the downside to all that is that employers, big companies, think, oh, and this is what's worrying people about AI, of course, is that, oh, well, if we get that, we don't need them, which is entirely wrong. You're going to need more of them because AI has got to be, controlled, for want of a better word. But I think, yes, automation takes the drudgery, wrong word. It takes the monotony out of the necessary. It's a bit like, oh God, I'm so far behind with my filing. We don't file anymore because it's all done. It's that sort of thing. But the attitude hasn't. Quite frankly, the attitude to credit has not changed at all. I mean, and I'm not just talking about the last 50 years. I mean, I reckon if you showed Francis Drake a marine bill of lading in 2024, he'd be amazed by how it was presented but he would recognise it's a document not a million miles from the kind of document he would have had in the 16th century loading a merchant ship. The principles are all the same. I know the containers and so on, let's not get into that, but you get what I'm trying to say, that and credit is just the same. Credit, the root of the word is trust. It comes from the Latin to trust. I'm doing something for you, a job, or I'm supplying something on the understanding, the trust, the promise that at a certain specified date in the future you will pay me. That's no different now than it was 100, 200, 500, 1,000 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
How we get the information, how we build the backup story, how we keep the records, how we collect them, etc. They're all 21st century and entirely different. But the principle of credit, me trusting you, the old Lloyd's insurance shake of the hand, it's exactly the same.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That was a great answer as well. I haven't really got much to add to that. That's actually perfect. I was trying to think what can I bring off the back of that, but no, it's like you say. Yeah, I think the one thing that I guess not to be worried about or anything. Let me just check up on this slide quickly and make sure that we're all good. Yeah, of course we are. The one thing that I guess, if we come back to the pandemic and stuff, and the importance of being a people person and whatnot, is that maybe the younger generation might be missing some of that in terms of being more introverted, maybe because of the pandemic or technology forcing them into taking a texting channel rather than over the phone.
I would kind of move away from the profession in a sense, in that it's something that we have to be aware of. What is the source of information on a generational basis? And the source of information for, kids growing up today is entirely different to what it was in my day. Even, young man, different to what it may have been in your day. It's changed that quickly. But the underlying principle within credit management is nothing is ever what it appears to be. I've said this many times to when I've been speaking to companies, helping them sort out their problems and so on. Treat your customers as you like to be treated as a customer. When you go into Marks and Spencer to buy a pair of socks, you do not give a brass monkey about Marks and Spencer systems, stock recording, their record keeping, and so on and so on. I want a pair of socks. Here's the money.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what your customers expect from you. And so, if you're going to have new systems and new processes, before you do anything else, check the customer interface. When I was acquired, my company was acquired by an American corporation back in 1990. we changed from a portrait invoice to a landscape invoice. And their system was imposed, and instead of a product description, it was a reference number. And I remember saying to the chief financial officer over in the United States, my phone's going to be red hot with queries here. Can we not at least just describe what the product is? You know? And I had hundreds of phone calls. I know we've had a delivery from you, Glenn, and I'm assuming this piece of paper refers to that delivery we've had, but it doesn't say so. Simple things, very simple things. And so all I would say, Tom, really, I'm going off at a tangent here, but I just think that people should be aware. You need to be aware of what makes people tick. You need to be aware of what motivates people. Why do you come to work? What do you work for? You need to be aware of what hurts and what doesn't hurt. And the facade that's put up may not be what's actually going on behind the doors. Yeah. And it's your job in the credit profession to open those doors and see what's actually happening. Yeah.
Yeah. True. That's a great answer. We're going to change the topic of conversation a little bit, not too drastically, because we're going to be talking about the place we're in right now. So, throughout your career, what point in your career did you discover CICM, or as you said earlier, ICM at the time?
Very early on, when I was and I don't really know how it came about. I believe it might have been my boss who'd received. I think it may be that my boss was a member or had been a member, but he must have received some kind of notification about an upcoming meeting and suggested I went along. And that was the beginning of the whole idea of networking. And it didn't really sort of explode, but things started to happen, and I became aware of future meetings and other things going on and so on. And then I became aware of other people. And I became aware of other people in the same industry that I was in. Oh, wait a minute, we can, one of the early things about in business to business were things like trade references. When you opened an account, you asked for the bank and 2 trade references. And I can remember a salesman coming into me with the completed form, and him saying to me, we really want this account because we're stealing it from X competitor. Oh, good, yeah, okay. Why is the competitor not quoted as a reference, a trade reference? Just a little thing, yeah. He's given 2 trade references that he keeps sweet, and the one that is having, So I remember saying to the sales guy, yeah, is he coming to us because you're a very skillful salesperson, or is he coming to us because they've put him on the stop list? Things like that. And when I became aware of all that, I don't know, I think I'll stand for council. I think I'd like to be part of this organisation. And that was it, really. That was the beginning. And then I went on to things like education committee and technical committee, and and there were all sorts of different things in those days going back, but advisory council and then executive board, and see how it all runs. And don't interfere, but be there to assist or guide, or if you've got a problem, come and talk to me about it. Or my first job was with a small organisation that was a mutual society run by a small team of about 20 odd people on behalf of its members. And so we've come in a way full circle that this is a kind of 21st century version of the business that I first started with years ago. And I think really more people should be exposed to the small business sector, in the sense that you really do value the need to get on with each other and to cooperate and communicate far more than working in a, One of the things I always did as a credit manager, Tom, when I worked in an organisation, when I went to a new company, I told you I worked at British Jeffrey Diamond and then David Brown Gears and then house sonography. I always wanted to spend some time in different departments when I joined the company. Find out who's there, what do they do, why do they do it, how do they do it. Because I could guarantee that if a customer at any time had a query about delivery, about quality, about size, about colour, about whatever it may be, I needed to know who I should go to get it sorted out. And if you I don't for 1 minute expect people to understand 100% everything about the business they're working for. You know, you wouldn't have somebody working at British Airways that knows exactly how to fly a plane or, you know, make the tea, but have some idea of where the bottlenecks are, where the decision people are, where it might go wrong, you know. And in a small organisation, that's vitally important. You need to be able to know. And if you don't get on, you know, you'll soon find out in an organisation like CICM if there's somebody in there that's not, you know, they aren't going to stay long. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, and it's always the channels are the channels to those people are much shorter as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have just me, my manager, and SLT, but obviously in a bigger business, it's several levels before you can get to those. So, no, that's really interesting, and I think I've learned a lot from an open plan office as well.
Exactly.
Back when we were in the watermill, it was all very cubby hold. You know,
it was all corridors and cupboards and bits.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, being up there, you overhear the conversations. Oh, Tom, can you do? Yeah, no worries.
And you wouldn't have heard that at home, Tom.
That's what I'm getting to. Exactly, and that's where I think you learn the most. You're all more aligned because of that.
And you see, my other comment I would make, you know, last time, I won't be a dinosaur anymore. I'm all in favour of video and conferencing and so on and so forth. But as things become more and more sophisticated, that background they're not there. They're not on a desert island in the South Pacific. You know, are they wearing trousers? Has she got a skirt on? I can't see the colour of her eyes. I can't see perspiration or the moisture. I can't see them reacting. And that's a real downside in communication. No?
Yeah, blurring reality. Right?
Absolutely. What a wonderful expression, blurring reality. Yeah. Go to the top of the class.
That's it. Thank you.
Don't stay there, though.
But yeah, no, I think you're right. Sometimes there is, like, you do go on a call or you do go on a webinar, and when they're pre-recorded, it's even worse. Because you're not really going to get the real answers that you want.
But this is a marvellous way of communicating with people. It's a marvellous way of getting a message across. And all I would say is, if you want more, come and join us. If you want more, come and join us.
Yeah.
There's room here for everybody.
That's it. That's a great way of putting it. Absolutely. We've kind of discussed it earlier, really. So I guess we're kind of repeating the point that the biggest benefit of belonging to a professional body like CICM has got to be the people, hasn't it?
It's being a member of a huge family. This is a family. You know, credit managers used to, as I say, work in a back office and nobody knew what they did. And every credit manager back in the early days I ever came across, credit manager, credit controller, whatever the title was, always assumed he or she was the only one that did that. And when they went to college on the CICM course, and they sat with 12, 15 other people from 12, 15 other companies, different. We do that. I do that. I've had that. This is the orphan. I'm not alone, am I? Of course you're not alone. There's 4,000 plus people out there already in the family and room for a lot more. And actually, I have noticed, if you want to ask me about any progress or changes, more and more companies are beginning to ask for CICM qualification when they're looking for recruiting staff. And that should be a learning curve for those employers who say, I don't want to pay for their training. They will benefit from, the whole profession benefits from. I would argue that a qualification isn't necessarily an indication that you're going to be the best thing since sliced bread at your job. A qualification is an adjunct to experience, or experience is an adjunct to qualification. You know, it's which comes first, the chicken or the egg. It doesn't. I'm not bothered. It doesn't matter. There's value in both. So there's a great value in low-level entry and great value in high qualification. One leads to the other.
Yeah. And I mean, excuse the expression, but qualifications and experience is peanut butter and jam, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's together. It's good. It's good stuff. No, and obviously to make this all cyclical in a way is you went in to your first job with that experience. Now it is asking for those qualifications, isn't it? It's asking for that base level knowledge.
Yeah.
And you make a good point there as well. More jobs are asking for that.
They are. Yeah.
That makes a good point.
And I mean, because of the partnerships that the CICM has built up over the years with people like Hayes, for example, you know, employment agencies know what is required, and that's a great help. But I mean, the one of the things I'm mostly proud of in the Chartered Institute of Credit Management is the Quality in Credit Management Program, the CICMQ. When you see what companies have done to achieve that accreditation and how they operate and how people work with each other in there, that's the biggest possible advert for benefit of membership of CICM. It really is. And we come back to the heart and the blood. That's what it's all about. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Because I love that analogy. Absolutely. Again, I guess like we sort of discussed really, we've sort of taken this conversation and run with it, which I love. Anything that you look back on where being part of CICM has helped you in your position, and I guess it's literally that story we were talking about earlier.
Yeah,
where,
very much.
Something lands on your desk, you don't know what it is, and you know who to call, or you have that network already. But a lot of people these days are reluctant to network, and I just wonder why that is.
I don't know. I can't answer that. I mean, it's a very personal thing, isn't it? But I don't think people fully appreciate the total value of networking, or there is a kind of cynicism about network. Oh, it's a jolly. You're going to a conference in Budapest, it's a jolly. Yeah. Okay, it is a jolly in a sense. But, you know, going back to my little tale about the accountant in the Griffin Hotel, Boar Lane, and it was in the bar afterwards. Yeah, maybe the presentation was a little bit like watching paint dry, and maybe the value was in the jolly part of it, the bar after a drink, but it paid dividends. So no, don't be cynical about jollies. They're not jollies; they're very hard work, you know. But the world's so small, you know. Don't give up the chance of, and you're not gonna rule the world from staring at a computer screen. You're only going to rule the world if you go out and about in it. Yeah. I mean, I always encourage credit people who always have done it. If you get the opportunity to visit a customer, visit them. You don't have to say, well, I've got to go because we need to collect this money or we need to sort this. You can go as a PR exercise. Just go. They're customers of yours. I'm in the area. I just thought I'd pop in and say hello. Is everything okay? They'll roll out a carpet. They love it, you know, and you love it.
Yeah.
Should we go for lunch? Yeah, let's have a look.
Yeah.
My one company I work for, the finance director used to say to me sometimes, Glenn, I've been through the expenses. You don't seem to have any. And I said, well, no, if I go see a travel, yeah. If I go see a customer, he gets lunch. I don't.
Yeah.
If I'm a salesman, I'm buying lunch. Yeah. But as a credit manager, he's buying me lunch. You know? No, I just be. I think my final word on the matter, Tom, is basically credit management is about people, and people are human. They've got faults, they make mistakes, they make errors, but that's part of the richness. And this is the richest profession I can think of. It's a beautiful profession. We see more than anybody else. And, we know things that other people, the headline in the Daily Mail about something, or this paper or that paper. When I knew about that. We saw that coming, That was a bit obvious.
Yeah, true. It is one of those careers that you've always got the finger on the pulse for, isn't it?
Yeah.
I do remember. I've been on a few presentations and things when they've said things, and I'm like, oh, okay, all right. And then, like you say, a month or two later, it's on the news. I'm like, yeah.
Just on a very practical level in your own company. This customer, you've been my customer for the past 15 years. You've never been late with payment. This month, you're a fortnight late. Huh? Should I be worried? Yeah.
The last question would have been, what advice would you give to somebody watching this video that is not a member of the Institute, and what are they missing out on?
Join. They're missing out on the ability to expand their horizons with the support of the largest family of credit professionals you could ever encounter. People say, what do I get out of it? Well, what you get out of it is what you want to get out of it, and also in proportion to what you feel you can put into it. But if you like Crown Green bowling, you would join a bowling club, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You don't Crown Green bowl on your back lawn at home by yourself.
Yeah.
If you want to be a professional credit manager and make your way in the world, join the Professional Credit Management Organisation.
That's it. Thank you very much for your time today, Glenn.